Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, from Aurora, and from me. Well, it has certainly been an eventful day and a half, or 2 days, to put it mildly. And so without further ado, I am going to plunge right in and hope that the puppy is not too distracting so that we can continue with this while she sits beside me and doesn't make too much of a fuss. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'm going to have to take her and put her outside. So, Laurie Buckle says, "Hello, Lady C. Some news outlets in the US are reporting that Thomas Markle has suffered a stroke and is hospitalized. Possibly his speech is affected as well. Wondering if you can verify the truth of these reports." Sadly, I can verify the reports. The information is accurate. It emanated from Dan Wooten of GB News, who was going to be hosting Thomas Markle for part of his trip here. So I also have been in touch with the Markle family, and they have been in touch with me, and fingers crossed, fingers crossed. More than that, I do not want to say, because we do not want to violate Thomas Markle's privacy, and it is pretty serious. But more than that, I really would prefer not to say. But yes, I am getting accurate information via GB News and the Markle family. Anne GB says, "Lady C, I read in the Daily Beast that you were hosting Thomas Markle at Castle Goring, but you refused to comment on whether this was true or not. They quoted you saying that you never comment on who your guests are and didn't intend to start now." Sounds like me. They also quoted you as saying something I agree with 100%. Quote, "I feel very strongly that Thomas Markle has been unfairly deprived of his dignity by his thankless daughter and pathetic son-in-law. I regard him as the living embodiment of King Lear, and I see it as the duty of all upstanding people to stand up for him." End of quotes. With that in mind, might you not make an exception this time, as Dan Wooten stated unequivocally in the Mail that you and GB News were hosting Thomas Markle, and there really would be no breach of protocol if you confirmed that fact. What do you think? If so, can you give us an insight into why you were hosting him, what your objectives were, and maybe even what you had planned for him? We know your motives are pure, and you wouldn't be doing anything you didn't believe to be the right thing to do. Thank you very much for that expression of faith. I appreciate it. And yes, I don't do what I think is wrong. I only do what I think is right. I get what you're saying and where you're coming from. And I was quoted, I was rung up by the press, and I refused to either admit or deny that I was going to be hosting Thomas Markle, because as I pointed out to them, and it was not only the Daily Beast, it was the Sun, etc., the Mirror as well, and I point blank refused to speak to them. And I actually told the reporter, who seemed a perfectly nice young man, that he should get himself a job with a rather better organisation than the Mirror, and that I wouldn't condescend to comment in any way, shape or form on anything that was going to appear in the Mirror, because I think they are the most disgusting rag. So, but yes, the information is out there. Dan Wooten and I, and Dan's people and I, have been in touch with each other for some time now. So yes, I'm not going to deny it. It's because really, I'm not ashamed of it. The reason why I didn't want to admit it was that I think it is tasteless and tactless to be commenting in the press or in the media about what is essentially a private visit. However, it has been derailed by Mr. Markle's unfortunate illness, and my purpose was to assist in the restoration of his dignity. I made it absolutely clear to him and to GB News, and GB News and Thomas Markle, both were appreciative of my stance. As I pointed out to both Thomas and to GB News, you cannot be dignified if you're bleating publicly at the same time. However, since it looks as if none of this is going to come to pass now, it does no harm. It shows that we're not trading on publicity or seeking publicity. It is a valid commentary, and it also will convey the extent to which Thomas Markle was going to be received by people of substance in this country. I will make the point that he was going to be received by people who would not receive Harry and Meghan under any circumstances. I need to make the point that Thomas Markle gets no money whatsoever for any of his interviews or media appearances. This is not about the money, and it has never been where he is concerned. This is about accurate representation and being fairly treated. He also, and this is the tragedy, he also wants to restore the close and loving relationship he had with his daughter for 36 years. Now, I'm not going to violate his privacy by going into some of the conversations we've had, but it is absolutely clear to me, and I have made the point to him, that I identify with his struggle because I observed my grandmother experiencing the same difficulties in trying to understand my mother. There are parallels to the two situations. And it is very difficult for a parent to come to terms with the fact that the child they brought up, the child they love, the child they think they know, doesn't exist, and maybe never existed. But if it existed in one form at one time, it no longer exists in a similar form at present. This, and yes, in so far as I am concerned, Thomas Markle is a living embodiment of King Lear, and his thankless daughter Meghan is the combination of Lear's two thankless daughters Goneril and Regan, and I have said it before and I'm going to say it again. She is gonorrhean, and if it sounds like a very unattractive disease, there's a good reason why, because it is an unattractive disease. Serpent's teeth, thankless children. Mr. Markle's visit was going to be partly with GB News and partly with me. During the GB News bit, and this shows to what extent GB News was really more about the restoration of his dignity than about trying to muscle in on the Jubilee, which is what some people thought he was trying to do, and they were trying to do. No, they weren't. Mr. Markle's grandchildren are going to possibly be a prince and princess of the United Kingdom. They are going to be the grandchildren of the monarch. They are going to be the niece and nephew of the monarch. Mr. Markle has a valid role to play with dignity, and he wishes to play it. There is nothing wrong with that. Mr. Markle has not sought fame. He has not sought money. He has simply sought to have the dignity that was stripped away from him in large measure by his thankless daughter Goneril to restored. He also has only one means of communicating with her, and he said it, and I have to say at first I had reservations, as I'm sure did many people, about the way he was going about things. I now fully understand it. I also have spoken to people who know Thomas Markle very well and have known him very well for decades and over a period of decades. He is a thoroughly decent, self-effacing, somewhat reserved man who simply loves his children and loves his grandchildren and wants to get to know the two royal grandchildren he has and to not be excluded by his combination of Goneril and Regan. I don't think there's anything ominous about Mr. Markle's desires. With that in mind, I have been asked to an event to celebrate the Jubilee at one of the leading castles in the country by the host and hostess. The family has contributed more than one Queen of England to England. They are at the absolute pinnacle of the social order. The host's mother was a very great friend from childhood of the Queen. I asked my host and hostess if I could bring along Mr. Markle, and they said yes. And rather more tellingly, GB News was happy for this to happen, even though they knew it was going to be a purely private event and that their cameras would not be allowed in. I think hopefully you begin to get the picture that this is not opportunism, but this is doing the decent thing by someone and helping him to restore his dignity. That was just one event. A former member of the royal household was going to be taking Mr. Markle to White's. White's is the premier gentlemen's club in the world. Someone else was organising another event for him at the Travellers Club, one of the premier gentlemen's clubs in the world. A lady of title was going to be hosting Mr. Markle and me and one or two other people at the RAC, which again is one of the chicest members-only clubs in the world. He was also going to be attending a service of Thanksgiving at Westminster Abbey with me. Of course, none of this is going to happen now. There were going to be other events. I was going to be hosting a dinner here for him in his honour. And the guest list included 2 princesses, 1 prince, 3 ladies, 2 lords, leading members of society, in quotes, descendants of the British royal family, who were also going to be hosting Mr. Markle at a private dining club on a ducal estate, etc., etc. I hope you've got the message. Actually, I'll just run through the list. One of the chicest socialites in the country, who is a very decent and thoroughly principled person, was going to be hosting a luncheon for Mr. Markle at the Wolsey. And he was going to be my guest on Ladies' Day at Royal Ascot. Most, if not all of this, was going to be beyond the reach of the press. The object of the exercise wasn't press attention. It was that inevitably, at some point, presumably, he would be able to speak about the way he had been received and the people by whom he had been received, who wouldn't condescend to pollute their properties with the presence of his daughter and son-in-law. I hope that answers the question. Ferocious Gumby says, Samantha Markle told Dan Wooten, my father is recovering in hospital. We ask for privacy for the family, for his health and well-being. And may I say at this point, prayers. Can you please pray for him? Prayer is definitely, hopefully, going to be a positive thing. Please pray for Thomas Markle's well-being. He just needs peace and rest. Godspeed. We are praying. He just needs some rest. It's a travesty how much he's been tortured and how much he's had to go through thanks to my sister's disregard the past few years. That is unforgivable. I agree. I totally agree. I think the way Meghan Markle set up her father and her family, both sides of her family, by humiliating them publicly, by denigrating them publicly with her cold, calculated snub, is a study in, well, I'm going to say it. I think it's a study in coldness, and one could even say evil. Kind people, decent people, compassionate people, people with a heart, people with a conscience don't behave like that. They don't ask strangers to their wedding and not their family. Thomas Markle was also set up by unscrupulous journalists who saw the opportunity to mock him and make him look ridiculous. They set him up. Without a doubt, they set him up. Surprise, surprise, what newspaper did it appear in? Oh, no, don't tell me. This Mail on Sunday. The same newspaper that also created the monster that Virginia Giuffre became. Now, the Mail, I have to tell you, is despicable. They, of course, have turned coat because they think it is in their interest to do so. But it doesn't alter the fact that they were responsible from the word go for helping to set Thomas Markle up in the most appalling fashion. And this attempt of his to retrieve his dignity, ill-advisedly, yes, naively, yes, innocently, yes, but maliciously, no, calculatedly, no, for financial gain or worldly gain, no. And this is what his daughter has used against him to refuse officially to see him again and to have anything more to do with him. The same daughter that gets on Oprah and tells a tissue and series of lies about the British royal family and the British nation. I agree with Samantha Markle. The whole thing is unforgivable. And I think, as I was quoted quite accurately in the Daily Beast as saying, it is the duty of upstanding people to stand up for Thomas Markle, because he has been reviled unreasonably, and if you have any sense of justice, it should offend you that this poor, innocent, decent man has been so traduced, not only by the press, but by his daughter. Annetta Grasso says, "Hi Lady C, greetings and love to you from Australia. We heard on TV that Mr. Markle had a stroke and is in a hospital in California. Let us see if Meghan Markle and her husband will visit him and bring the children with them. I wouldn't put anything past that cheap hustler and the dolt that she leads around by his nose. And nose is a four-letter word that is interchangeable with a rooster. Cock-a-doodle-doo. The cock crowed twice, the cock crowed thrice. Goodness gracious me. Ooh, the cock was announcing the dawn. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Harry's being led around by his nose. Well, let me tell you something. I know from my own personal experience with my mother, who shared many of the traits that Meghan Markle exhibits. People of that ilk don't scruple to do a total volte-face when it is in their interest. Of course, my mother had position and power a lot longer than Meghan Markle has had it. So my mother was a lot more practiced and shameless. And Meghan Markle is still at the stage in life where she has to suck up to the husband that she leads around by his nose. Cock-a-doodle-doo, Mickey. Call those roosters in. They're outside in the pen. They're scratching for feed. Call them in, please, Mix. And while you're doing it, grab one or two of the pigs that are going to be flying from Montecito. You know, Meghan doesn't actually realize, I don't think, that she can do a total volte-face. And as long as Harry is sufficiently hooked on her, the way an addict is hooked on heroin, if they're a heroin addict, that the grade of heroin isn't going to make a scrap of difference to the fact that they're addicted to the substance. And I have seen with my own father, who actually was a man of some honour and integrity and principle, that everything would be sold down the river in the interest of making sure that he had his fix available as and when he needed it. I can tell you what she can do, because I know what Meghan is supposed to have told Harry, because I know what Harry's people tried to tell me, and it's all a tissue of lies. And Meghan is most likely afraid that if she cuts out the pretense and replaces it with something rather more factual, that Harry's regard for her might be lessened, and indeed it might even be a relationship deal breaker. I would actually not be surprised if, in his pathetic desperation and dependency, Oedipus is perfectly happy to slaughter everybody as long as he keeps Mama wife sweet. And therefore, she can actually say to Harry perfectly reasonably, oh, you know, Age, I've decided, you know, notwithstanding the fact that Daddy, and remember we got to use the word Daddy because we got to pull at all those hot strings that all those suckers have, and they just, we've got to play them the way we play violins. And we've got to pull at those heartstrings and make absolutely sure that, well, I think what we should be doing is going and visiting Daddy and taking the kids to see Daddy. Because, Netflix wants great footage. And it's going to be fantastic footage. And I'm strong enough and I'm big enough to cope with all the things that I thought I couldn't cope with, and that you've helped me in your marvellous, masculine, protective way to overcome my fears of Daddy and my fears of meeting Daddy. And maybe I'll write another letter to Daddy. But no, better still than writing a letter to Daddy, I think we should just go and turn up, because Daddy's going to be thrilled to see me. And she'll be absolutely right, because there is no doubt in my mind of what I know from observing with my grandmother and mother, and what I have gleaned from various conversations with Thomas Markle, that a parent in a situation like that welcomes their child back. The prodigal is welcomed with open arms. And the parent doesn't actually care that much to add up 2, 2, 2, and 2 and get 8. They're perfectly happy to decide that it's 22 and another 22, or 2,222. They don't care, because that is the nature of the human being. So she would be able to pull it off. And I'll tell you, my recommendation to her would be to do precisely that. Not only will it play well with the public and with Netflix, but it will relieve her father's anguish. Because make no mistake about it, Meghan Markle and her antics are what drove her father to have a heart attack and have now driven her father to have a stroke. I'm not saying that he's in great physical condition, but I know from having spoken to him the tremendous distress and the tremendous stress he has been under, and the tremendous struggle he has had, as would anybody with a heart, to come to terms with what has been happening with him and his daughter. Because you see, to the public, it's just something of interest. To him, it's his beloved daughter. And there's no way around that fact. The fact that the oasis has turned out to be a mirage doesn't alter the fact that it is his daughter. Sue Ellen Andrews says, I don't think they'll come to the Jubilee now Mr. Markle is in hospital. They'll compete with the Queen with a hospital reunion. Sue Ellen Andrews, I hope you're right. First of all, nobody wants them here except the Queen. Nobody. Nobody except the Queen and the Sussex squad. and amid scabies. Nobody else wants them here. It would be a very good move. She'd be able to play the dutiful daughter. And look at what a wonderful person I am. One act of compassion at a time. And this was a really big act. We managed to get a few hours away from Montecito into the hospital and to show Daddy the kids. Am I not a wonderful person? After all that man's done for me. Sorry, I meant to me. To me. My mouth keeps on slipping. It's all those times on the teeth that I spoke the truth. And sorry that I told those lies about what a wonderful man my daddy was. And I keep on forgetting, you know. It's really difficult when you said black was white for many years and now you're saying white is black. It's sort of really difficult, but my mouth keeps on slipping, y'all. But it's a great career move. It certainly would be. It would be the best thing she did. And I'll tell you, if she doesn't do it and her father dies, she will never be forgiven by the public. And if she doesn't do it and her father survives and this disgusting spectacle of disloyalty, treachery, ingratitude, and thanklessness continues, she will lose more and more and more supporters. I have said from the very outset that her treatment of her father would prove to be her biggest mistake, and it has proven to be. I'm not a fortune teller. I didn't look in a crystal ball. I simply used my brain and my heart and the fact decent people behave in a certain way and other decent people recognize decency and deplore lack of decency. Louise Leslie says, "Oh dear, Thomas Markle's stroke, poor man, has just given his daughter the perfect dramatic out for not attending the Jubilee while providing lots of juicy footage potential for Netflix. You could can film her daughterly distress, the tearful hospital visits, the father-daughter reconciliation, especially now he can't talk, meeting his grandchildren for the first time, etc., etc. Louise Leslie, you should have been a script writer. I would suggest that you get in touch with Netflix and point out to them that this is the script that needs to be written. And since the fact of the matter is that Meghan Markle has shown us very clearly she doesn't have an authentic or genuine or sincere bone in her body, it doesn't really matter if she's lying or not, as long as she provides a convincing enough act for her father. And as long as she provides a convincing enough act for people to say, oh, well, she might really mean it. That's the best case scenario. Joanna says, let's see how much money Meg is going to make from the story of her sick father. Will not be surprised if she goes to his bedside after all she has done. Everything she can to try and take the limelight from the Queen's celebrations. Each time the Queen heads the new, Meg creeps up behind to push up front. Well, of course she does. Who does that? 96-year-old woman thinks she is. Just because she's the Queen of England. I'm Meghan Markle, proud, confident woman of colour. One act of compassion at a time. Who does she think she is? I'm the person who should be in front at all times. And as for that Catherine, that ghastly sister-in-law, She just steals my thunder. Maybe Lady C will ask her and me for a tour of the roof at Castle Goring. That would be an opportunity. Wouldn't it just? Kate French says, I've wondered if there were a connection between Thomas Markle announcing that he would be at the Jubilee and hoped to meet some of the royal family, namely Charles, and Meghan's decision to go. Got to wonder if her decision to go would have anything to do with keeping her father and Harry's family apart. Maybe thinking that if she and Harry were there, that the royal family wouldn't meet with Thomas, as her presence would ensure that the royal family could not meet with Thomas Markle. I do wonder about this because I've always felt that she did not, big block capitals, want them to meet, nor for her father to have a chance to talk to Charles in particular, or any other family members, including Harry, because he might tell them the truth about her and destroy her fabricated stories of growing up, or maybe even the truth of her having children. I'm curious, and I don't know if this has anything to do with her going, but I find it odd that the decision was made after learning her father would be there. Well, Kate French, stranger things have happened than that your hypothesis be accurate. And I made the point in Meghan and Harry, the real story, that she didn't want her father at the wedding, and that if she had to endure his presence at the wedding, and remember, she never did send him an invitation to the wedding, and she did everything in her power to press his buttons, knowing that he is an extremely loving, sensitive, emotional man, to drive him over the edge, and whoa, she succeeded. My God, am I not clever? Gosh, got rid of that one. Am I not classy? Because, as I said in the book, Thomas Markle is garrulous. He is straightforward. He has no guile. He is just plain, decent, ordinary human being who wanted the best for each of his children and did the best that he could for each of his children when he could. And because he was prosperous when Meghan was a child and wasn't so prosperous when Samantha and Thomas Jr. were children, he indulged Meghan to her detriment, his detriment, the detriment of the royal family, the detriment of the Queen, and all our detriments. She doesn't want them to meet. It's obvious. She doesn't want them to meet. She will move heaven and earth to prevent a meeting. But let us see if she and Netflix work a deal now where there will be a magical meeting. Oh, Daddy, I just love you. I always did. I'm such a wonderful person. I'm going to forgive you for having tried to preserve your dignity after I ripped it to shreds the way I did by not asking any member of the family and not even sending you an invitation. But Mommy received an invitation. Mommy received help from the palace. You didn't. No. And Daddy, it's not true that I am responsible. The palace never offered. No, they didn't. That Lady Colin Campbell's such a liar, Daddy. She really can't be believed. She just lies about me, Daddy. Oh, Daddy. Oh, Daddy. Oh, Daddy. Oh, Daddy. Thank God we're back together on good terms. Come on, H. Gather up the kids and let's go. Netflix, you've got your footage. Time to go. I do love you, Daddy. I do, but don't bother to phone me again. I'll be in touch as and when Netflix and I decide it suits us. Lisa Keel says, Dear Lady C, please wish Thomas Markle all the best from us in England. I gather you were going to meet up with him. How very sad. It would have been wonderful to have you both meet up and exchange notes. Love listening to you and seeing the gorgeous pups with Mum. Thank you. Oh, yes, it is sad that it looks as if it's not going to happen, because I was not pushing any agenda, but if Thomas wanted me to do something with him, I would have done it. Duh. And I certainly was going to be doing something with him and GB News, which would have been, I should think, far more anodyne. So yes, it's sad, because I think it would have helped to put things in their proper place, but maybe there'll be no need. My purpose has been to help Thomas Markle to restore his dignity, and if his thankless daughter will do that for him and for me, and cut me out of the equation altogether by going to visit him in the hospital and taking her children with her, because those are his grandchildren, in much the same way that my father wanted to meet my children. Once they are your children, they are the parents' grandchildren. My father wanted to meet my children. He died before I was able to take them to Jamaica. My mother knew my children and was actually a pretty respectable grandmother to them. It doesn't matter how a child comes into existence. Once it's yours, it's their grandchild. So no matter all the speculation and rumour about Archie and Lily, they are Thomas Markle's grandchildren, and he wants to meet them. And he also wants to re-establish contact with his thankless daughter. And even if we all know she's as sincere as a $3 bill, as long as he can use that coinage to make himself sustained, that's all that counts. It's not about us, it's about him. Sylvia Arvayo says, Hello, Lady C. Meghan Markle trying to be the Royal of Montecito, showing up at the POLO event with black lampshade on the head, kissing everyone and H. And Kim Lloyd-George says, in a similar vein, she wore that hat wrongly, 2 exclamation marks. The style is meant to sit low over the brow, Hepburn style, not cocked like a Yankees cap, 2 exclamation marks. This made me furious. What kind of woman is it who cannot wear her hat properly? I ask you, cardinal sin for me. Kim Lloyd-George, incidentally, to those of you who don't know, is married into one of the prime ministerial families of Great Britain. Her ex-husband's, I think, grandfather or great-grandfather, I don't remember what now, was David Lloyd George, Earl Lloyd George, as he became. And he was a wartime leader in the First World War. And she is a very striking, gorgeous-looking American. And she is stylish, and she's absolutely right. Meghan Markle doesn't even know how to wear a hat. And pathetic. She looked like a scrubber pretending to be a lady and hoping that everybody would think, my God, you're so classy. Oh, because she looked in the mirror, I'm sure, and thought, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the classiest of us all? And the mirror mouthed back at her as her lips moved. Without a doubt, it's Meghan Markle, as was now the Duchess of Sussex, known as Meghan the Duchess of Sussex, even though there's no such title. Kate Bram says, I think Nacho's wife has no love for Never Was. She avoided being around Never Was at the last match. Nacho may be there only for the summer polo season and then he'll bolt. Earlier bolt if he finally sees the light. The team will fold because the rest of the other team are only there for Nacho. They see the deal with the royal wannabes and aren't liking it. Well, Nacho Figueras is a good friend of Harry's. And good friends will be supportive of their friends even as they are dubious about their friends' relationships. So I've seen it time and again. In fact, this has emerged very clearly in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, that all his friends knew she was poisoned from the word go, but didn't say anything to him because they didn't want him dropping them. My step-grandfather's family had an estancia in Argentina. A great friend of mine is a member of a famous Argentine family. The Argentinians have a very well-established upper class that used to cause a great deal of problems for Evita Perón, who despised what she called the oligarchs. Come on, yes, come on. Look who's come to join us. Oh dear, I hope she's not going to create havoc. And well-bred Argentinians despise pretentious pifflers and trash posing as quality products. Let's put it that way. And I have heard that the well-bred Argentinians have their skin crawl as, hello, I'm Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, comes along and lets them know how classy she is. Not that I'm accusing anyone of anything. Lisa Keel says, Dear Lady C, please wish Thomas Markle all the best from us in England. I have done so, incidentally. So many people have asked me to convey their good wishes that I have already done it, and he thanks you all. I gather you are going to meet up with him. How very sad. It would have been wonderful to have you both meet up and exchange notes. Love listening to you and seeing the gorgeous pups with Mum. Well, one has come to join us. Oh, yes, baby girl. Mutty loves you too, yes. And I think on that note, I will say, please, if you'd like to continue praying for Thomas Markle and sending him your good wishes via me, I will be delighted to convey them. But your prayers are more important, or maybe they're equally important. So I'm not going to discourage one or the other. And I will say thank you very much for any good messages that you will send to him and for any prayers that you make on his behalf. And more than that, all I can say is I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and please keep the questions coming in. Okay? Thank you so much. God bless and goodbye.